All right, and welcome to another learning session. We're going to be using Sparx Enterprise Architect, or Sparx EA. And I've noticed that a few modelers keep recreating their model elements for different conversations, and you don't need to do that. Sparx is a database underneath it. It's fully extending the UML object-oriented design principles, concepts, specification, and you can reuse your elements, extend your elements to do different views. You can expose, in this particular case, we start with a clean block diagram. We have quite a few things underneath each one of these elements that deal with tag values, requirements, and other metadata that pertains to a specific conversation for specific stakeholders. You may be reusing these building blocks for a PowerPoint presentation or a general presentation to your stakeholders through whatever objective that you have, any delivery exercise that's taking place. So in this session, we're going to show you how to effectively do that, when to do that versus creating new elements, and much more. So let's get started. So we brought over an e-commerce block only diagram from our reusable asset service for us to extend. We took this model and we created all new elements, new global unique IDs that we could use in this project, especially for solution approach and design. We've used these models to build various views. This one deals with tag values. We build reports off the block model. This is the solution approach based off the data that is under each element within the block diagram. However, we used this model here, which fits better within various reports. This is not an eye chart. You can actually read what's going on in this model. However, on the block diagram with tags, we excluded this from our reports because this is an eye chart. I mean, if you could imagine this particular model printing in this document alongside with this model, it would be very hard to read. So we use this model for digital discussions. In other words, collaboration within Sparx Enterprise Architect. I mean, we can pick particular items and we can start conversations. Over here, you can see the project manager started a conversation. Over on the e-commerce, we can start conversations. So you can start collaborating in real time off of elements within your modeling environment. However, reports are different. Reports basically represent static snapshots of the model at any point in time that can be used to document and present that data in a structured format, often for analysis, decision-making, and communication. Reports can include text, tables, charts, graphics, and summarize the visual data. Reports are often generated from queries, as we've shown, using fragments, and sometimes using specialized reporting tools such as Power BI or Tableau. Reports are intended for end users, stakeholders, and management who need to review the data and make decisions, but it is, again, at a static point in time, where views, on the other hand, are virtual views of the data. I just want to put it that way. Views often defined by SQL queries and include filters, joined and aggregated data from underlying tables. The views are created in order to promote a conversation, model-driven discussions, model-driven development, model-driven design. So views are very important, as I've explained in TOGAF, for the various stakeholder concerns, views, and viewpoints. Let me prove one of my points. So we have this block diagram here, and we have this block diagram here showing tags. And how we expose tags or relevant data under the elements is we go to diagram, we go to elements, and here we only have tags turned on. You could turn on everything and you would get literally everything that is underneath the elements. Let's turn on attributes, operations, requirements, and let's see here. I don't want to do notes. It's going to get really out of hand. It's going to break my diagram. And we're going to leave tags in here. I want to do constraints. Let's just do these. Watch what happens. So now you can do a diagram that shows all of this. And this can become, if you're putting in a report, quite an eye chart and hard to read. So let's look at this diagram. What I'm going to do is open it back up again, go into elements, turn all of these things off. See here, make sure everything's off, but I want tags on. And when you do that, you can see, oh, now I've got to size everything. So that makes it more complicated to manage. So then you've got to go up here each time. Let's turn off these. We don't want to resize those. And let's try to make everything fit the smallest possible size. And everything is still kind of broken, right? So that's looking a little better. Let's zoom in. But now the lines are messed up. I mean, could you imagine doing that every time? I can't afford to waste my time this way. So I create views that represent the models that I want to show to my stakeholders. So if you ever do that, just go ahead and close the model. Don't save. Let's open up the model and see if everything is fixed. Not quite. Messes things up. Very frustrating. So when I'm building my models, what I tend to do, as I've shown you before, is just exclude what I don't want showing in reports. This one's included. And then it will be printed properly within the report and won't include this diagram in here or other diagrams that I have built reusing the same building blocks. Another thing that we can do with our building blocks when we're reusing them is reuse them and build them in custom diagrams. And we can then use this model to put into PowerPoint presentations or other perspectives, especially for non-technical users, that help them understand the connectivity between the applications within the architecture that we're working. Now this particular model, and let's just go to Service Exchange, hit Alt-G to find in the browser, is part of the solution architect work extending the building block. So all I did was use these elements and bring them into a separate custom diagram and then organize it and color them the way that I want. That can be shown in other documentations, especially presentations to the team and other clients as we're moving forward. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click in here, find in browser. This is the diagram right here. I create a folder within the document repository called presentation views. And then I simply drag and drop this diagram, go all the way up here, presentation views. And now this model stands on its own within its own namespace. From here, let's run a report. We're going to use the same template, solution approach, for this diagram in this namespace, all right? And we're going to take the name of this particular model and it's going to be used for the document name, all right? So let's go ahead and hit generate because we're going to the place we want to go and hit view. So now I see this model in a solution approach template, but that's it. There is nothing here for these elements. Let's go ahead and drag this model back down into solution analysis where the building blocks are. I'm going to drag and drop it right underneath building blocks so it's back here. I'm going to go to this model here, double click in here, and I'm going to exclude from a report. And then I'm going to go to this model, double click, and I want to go to diagrams, make sure that exclude is turned off. It still is because we did it a moment ago. And now what I'm going to do in the building blocks folder is run a report on all of the elements that are here. Again, we're going to use the solution approach template. Let's go ahead and step on building blocks model. Go ahead and hit generate. It is going to run through all of the elements that are in this namespace and produce a report. It is done. Let's go ahead and hit view. Now the solution approach document has a less technical block diagram in it with all of the intelligence of each element that is in the conversation. So you can pick and choose what you want to do. I typically will move this up into presentation because I would only use a model like this in a PowerPoint presentation and certainly not in an artifact. It's not an important artifact that needs to be statically created and versioned and managed under a repository. Now, as the design team starts working off the solution building blocks, the architecture that's here, they will come into their own namespace and bring these elements in using generalization. They could certainly use specification, but we're using generalization, as you can see, with the child reference to each one of the elements. In the model here, you can see they brought in the elements using generalization. Here's an example. This service exchange element is in the solution building blocks. And what they did was they generalized the elements. You could grab the element, drag and drop it in. You're going to go to links, and I've shown you this in other videos. We're going to use generalization, and they can create a reference to exchange that they can come into properties and rename whatever they're doing. So there's two elements in here. They have their own global unique IDs, and they can start doing design for the architecture that they're working on. And I was going to say do design and promote collaboration. Here they're starting to work on the class element for the API. Here they may be working on other class elements for other components as part of the project. And the interesting thing about using generalization, if you go over to tag values, here is the class element for the child or the generalized, the subclass. This would be the superclass, as you've learned. And the superclass has all these tag values. Well, this generalized subclass inherited those values. So they can reuse the tag values within their own class elements, and they can even manage the tag values. Like, for instance, you can see we're using stage tag values. Let me bring properties out to center. They're using stage tag value. They're working through their design. It's acceptable to them, and therefore, as they're going through their approval process, they move the element to the design phase. So now when you're looking at the original, it's in the solution. They could change it here if they wanted to. That the solution architect would work and say, all right, you can change my building block to design as you're promoting the design architecture. This would be high level design as they're moving into detailed design. When we go over the child, as soon as we made a change, was applied to the subclass or the child class of this particular element. And you can do this very fast, a lot faster than me talking about it. So when your modelers get better, more effective and efficient in modeling, they'll breeze through their elements. You can see this child element this is the superclass, cloud data, superclass, CRM, and they can give the subclass any name they want. So they would come in here and they would rename the subclass based on the topics that they're working on. For example, in the service architecture, this may be the K8s or Kubernetes component being deployed as part of the deployment for the API. This may be another component dealing with policy management, security, relevant to access management of the API, and much more. The conversation can go forever, and you can build your models reusing the elements in various ways that I've shown you to depict your story you're telling to your stakeholders based off their views and concerns and their viewpoint. Another cool thing that I want to share with you that most modelers go, you can do that. Remember, on this particular model, we put it in its own namespace. So it's sitting up here. However, I've shown you how to do specific views. So I can switch views and I can go into specification view. Look at that. I'm mining all of the data and intelligence under that model. So I can go back to the model, and if someone's asking a question on a particular element, I go, well, let's switch views to specification view and read the intelligence that's under an element. Let's switch views to connect a relationship matrix, and then let's link only the connected. I pick up the same colors that were in that model, and I can see all of the associations. I can see their cardinality. I can double click into them and any intelligence that happens to be taking place between those elements in their conversation from source to target, and I can do a lot more. So you can reuse your elements, reuse the elements for reports, for just non-reports, I want to say, but any other conversations that you're having for collaboration and discussion reasons, and certainly much more. All right, that's going to conclude this session. Hopefully you learned a lot. We learned how to take existing elements in a block diagram and then extend them, showing different concerns, views, and viewpoints of the elements, even down to building PowerPoint presentations. And what's even more exciting is that when you start publishing to the web your models, you can see that we start getting a view that looks something like this, where your stakeholders or anyone that has access to your website where your models are able to drill down into specific conversations and have a full understanding of the architecture as it progresses. They can drill down into specific elements. They can read the intelligence that's under each element by the architect and other stakeholders. They can see the associations to and from various things, the tag values and what they mean, and much more. So I hope this video was helpful for you. Thanks very much for watching. And until the next episode, happy modeling.